Hello everyone and welcome to today's Cambridge English Teacher Google Hangout with Herbert Puchta, who's our expert today, he's the author of, amongst many courses, Think, and he's going to be talking about values and answering questions from everybody. So is there anything you'd like to say, Herbert, to start?
Well, hello, Alistair. I'm pleased to meet you here in this Google Hangouts, the first one that I've ever been doing. So I'm very excited and a little nervous too. I'm here in my study in my home in Austria, and I'm looking forward to hopefully being able to give some answers to the questions we are going to receive from the audience.
Okay, thanks. And sorry, just having a slight technical issue there. Okay, so it's very interesting. We had a different perspective from Jacqueline Oviedo in the discussion forum, who said that she felt it isn't up to teachers to teach students what she describes as what their parents should teach them, but that we shouldn't speak too much about values, but just be respectful to each other as individual, intelligent human beings. What are your thoughts on that?
Yes, that is a very good point, and I'd like to thank Jacqueline for making it. As teachers, we can of course never replace our student parents, and that certainly isn't our task either. But the two examples that Jacqueline gave in the comment she sent is confirm, I believe, that values, of the importance of values as an integral part of our teaching and learning system. If we believe in the need for the teacher to respect their students, as Jacqueline is actually saying, to respect them as human beings, and not just as learners of the language we are teaching, then such an attitude, the teacher's attitude, does reflect certain values. And I would agree too with the point made that one way of showing our respect to our students is to respect the values they got from their parents. There are at least two reasons why teachers might feel they need to go a little bit beyond the system of values that their students are bringing with them already. One possible reason is that things happen in the classroom that need an intervention from the teacher as an educator, in cases of students using sexist language, for example, being verbally or physically aggressive towards one another, being provocative or disruptive, and so on and so forth. In those cases, I guess it would not be enough to rely on our students' parents. The other possible reason for many of us is that we are required to be educators at the same time as we are language teachers or language trainers. And this requirement might come from an official syllabus, for example, which is often the case in state schools. Likewise, quite a few teachers at private language schools have mission statements or other official documents that somehow require them to be educators as well as language teachers. So while I fully agree with the examples that Jacqueline has given in terms of being respectful to students and respecting the values they are hopefully bringing with them because they got them from their parents, they learned them from their parents, they were conveyed to them from their parents. There are times, I think, when we need to proactively maybe try and influence our students beyond the values they're getting from their parents.
Thanks. Going back to the forum again, we've got a comment from Esther, who says she says she found the article very interesting, and she thinks that, like you, that teachers should teach values as much through what they do as through what they say. Do you think that the teachers should be role models? And if so, what challenges does this create for them, and how can they resolve those challenges?
Yeah, I fully agree with Esther. I believe you said, um, you know, we need to teach modals in the foreign language class, but modals are not ideal for pedagogical interventions. You must, you mustn't, you ought to, you ought not, you should, you shouldn't, etc., etc., etc. These models often don't get the kind of results we are hoping to achieve in our classrooms. So I think there are, as I said in the handout also, there are other ways that allow us to influence our students more respectfully, maybe. One is that students need role models, and I believe, apart from their parents and other healthy mentors in their lives, it is their teachers who are significant others. And students are actually often looking up to their teachers. They're looking for not for their teachers to tell them what they should or shouldn't do, but they're often observing their teachers, and they learn from the model that they get from their teachers, from the models of behavior they see in their teachers, from the model of how they treat other students in class, and so on and so forth. Mm. This is not always easy, of course.
Yes.
We are not saints. We make mistakes too when we treat students. We are sometimes impatient. We are sometimes maybe also not fair. I think it's important to be authentic and to also apologize to students when we have made a mistake. I think it's important to also share with them our feelings when we, for example, have treated a student in a classroom unfairly, maybe, and we're finding out later. So the model of behavior that the teacher gives is something that I think is extremely important.
Okay, thanks. I've got a question that's come in via the chat, and just to let everyone who's attending know that you can type a question into the Q&A section on the right-hand side, and we'll answer as many of those as we can. This one's from Charlotte, who mentions that you talk in the handout about the power of stories. Mm. Could you please give us an example of the power of stories?
Okay. If I may, I would like to use an example from the book that I have co-written with Jeff Stranks and Peter Lewis Jones, our very recently published course for teenage students. It's called Think. This would be level 3 of Think. Alistair, have you got a copy there?
Yes, so I think I have actually. That's Think.
That'd be great. Could I ask you to show the text from a unit that is called All the Same? The text about Nelson Mandela. Have you got that there?
Yes. Is that my prisoner, my friend?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so I'll hold that up to the
so this
screen.
is a kind of a story that I think is a good example of what I'm talking about here. This is basically the story of Christo Brand, who in 1978 joined the prison service in South Africa. He was an 18-year-old white South African at that time. Now he was being sent to work as a warden in the famous prison on Robben Island, and it was there that he met prisoner 46664. As our story says here, a quiet 60-year-old black man who turned out to be extremely friendly and started to ask Christo Brando lots of questions, personal questions about his family, his education or his plans for the future. Well, that prisoner was no other than Nelson Mandela. And as we know, he would become the president of the Republic of South Africa one day. And the story basically is all about this prison warden's perspective of what happened between the prisoner and himself, and how the prisoner actually treated him. He said there was no color barrier between us. And he said, like me, Mandela came from a farm. We understood that we shared the same sky and the same air. It was very interesting that when Mandela actually became president, that's part of the story, he made sure that Christo Brand got a different job, and he was actually working for the president. And then one day Mandela was in a meeting with important politicians from other countries, when suddenly he noticed Christo Brand, and he interrupted the meeting. He walked across the room. He walked over to Christo Brand, and he hugged him, and he said to the politicians, "This person was my friend when I was in prison." So it's a beautiful story. And Christo Brand says, "Mandela was my prisoner, my friend, my president, and my father." So this is, I think, a perfect example of respectful behavior that the prisoner in this case showed towards the man who was the prison warden. Now, what we also have here in this following this task is a values activity where we ask students to think about stereotypes, because I think this beautiful story with stereotypes. So yeah, thanks for holding this up, Alistair. So first of all, what we do here is we explain what a stereotype is. We have a definition of a stereotype. Then we get students to think about their own country or a region of their country, and we ask them whether people from other places have fixed ideas about the people who live there. Of course, there could have been all kinds of stereotypes that either Mandela or Christo Brand could have had about the other person. One was white, the other person was colored. One was a prisoner, the other was his warden. So we could have had all kinds of stereotypes. So this story, I think, is a good way of actually getting people to think about stereotypes. Then we say, you know, when you think of ideas, fixed ideas that people have about other people have about people living in your place, why do you think people have these ideas? And do you think there's any truth in the stereotypes of your country or your region? Then we go on by saying to students, some stereotypes are about nationalities. What other groups of people are there stereotypes about? Sorry, write a list, then compare your ideas. And then we get them to discuss different stereotypes in groups, and also stereotypes that people have about teenagers. So that would be, I think, one example of a story, a rather moving story, a story that when we tried this text out in teenage classrooms, was met with great interest, and that I think can get people to think about values, such as in this case, avoiding stereotypes.
Okay, thanks. Let's go back to another question from the forum now. So Teresa mentioned that she sometimes feels a little disheartened at the lack of values shown by her teenage learners, and that it's a real challenge to communicate values to a class of 30 students or more. But she's determined not to forgive up. What advice can you give to support and encourage her?
Yeah, many thanks to Teresa for bringing this up. I found this contribution, extremely valuable. What Teresa is actually saying here chimes very well, I believe, with the dictum that comes from Michael Grinder, and that I have frequently quoted, actually. He says, if you can teach teenagers, you can teach anyone. And it's certainly true that on the one hand, it can be very rewarding to teach teenagers. And Teresa is actually confirming this when she says that she loves her job, and she finds that one of the most important things is to create empathy among her learners. And it's also true that teaching teenagers, as Michael Grinder says, can be extremely challenging, especially when, as Teresa mentions, classes are large. According to the work done by Kieran Egan, many teens, as cool as they may be on the surface, are actually rather insecure, and we need to consider this if we want to understand why they are so difficult. They often perceive the world as quite threatening. They often ask themselves questions about their own future, questions that are existentially threatening in a way. The kind of questions such as, will I be successful in my life? Will I find a good job? Will I earn enough money in my job? Will I have a family one day? What happens when my parents die, and when will that be? And so on and so forth. Naturally, they haven't got any answers to such questions, and hence feel insecure, while, of course, at the same time pretending perhaps to themselves as well as to others, especially also to their peers, that they are so cool. So these insecurities often lead to a lack of self-esteem. And as a consequence, their behavior becomes, or can become, may become challenging at times. Now, what Teresa is pointing out in her statement is very important, actually. The quality of the classroom discourse, the way the teacher shows respect for her students. This is also something that was mentioned by several other colleagues previously. And the way the teacher listens to her students. So they have a role model for how to treat other people, for example, their classmates, respectfully. This, I agree, is a process that doesn't get immediate results. As teachers, we need a lot of patience, and we need to accept that there are times when our interventions don't work so well, and I can understand Teresa's frustration at times. But it's also interesting to talk to adults about the teachers they had when they were teenagers. Whenever I did this with colleagues in seminars, they usually remember those teachers best who didn't just have good teaching techniques, but who were real human beings, who respected and valued their students as human beings too. And not just as learners, not just as recipients of the language or of the subject matter that we teach as teachers.
Okay, thanks. Another question relating to the forum. So in Tarita's comment in the forum, she emphasized respect, tolerance, and an open heart and mind as 3 key values to convey to learners. Which values do you think are the most important?
Well, it's difficult in a way, isn't it, to actually rank all the values, because all the values that are generally regarded as the universal ones, also the values I mentioned in my statement, values such as environmental values and moral values, values for art, values that have got to do with learning and learning attitudes and lifelong learning. All these values are extremely important, actually. So it's difficult to rank order them. But I'm thinking of two statements, two quotations that come from Earl Stevick. On the one hand, he says, success in the foreign language class, and I've quoted this frequently, success in the foreign language class depends less on materials, techniques and linguistic analysis, and more on what goes on inside and between the people in the classrooms. That's his the first statement. And the other statement is language learning is a total human experience. So if we agree that it is, first of all, the quality of the classroom discourse that counts, then, of course, it is those values that maybe are most important. First of all, that we have spoken about already: respect for other people, respect for classmates, respect for the teacher, but also when we talk about the teacher, respecting students as human beings and not just as students. Tolerance, accepting and respecting otherness, which of course starts in the classroom but doesn't end there. Language learning, I guess, is about respecting otherness. It's about respecting the otherness that is connected with another language, but it goes beyond that. It's about the other culture, and it's about other cultures and other people and other peoples.
Okay, thanks. Talking about values can sometimes require a particular language level in order to discuss what can be sort of quite complex concepts, perhaps. Do you have any suggestions on how to achieve this with the learners with a very low language level?
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, it's relatively easy to talk about values as long as we have the right stimuli and the right questions we ask our students when they are on a relatively high language level. So getting, if you're a teacher of C1 students, it may be much easier to get a discussion about values going than if you are a teacher of, say, at say A2 or B1 level. I wanted, because I have these books next to me, I wanted to give an example of a story, maybe again, and a values task that was actually written for A2. Alistair, have you got the A2 level of think there?
Yes.
Can you hold that up? It would be the story would be on page 57.
Okay, yep, got that.
You got that there. It's a beautiful story of loyalty and friendship. Actually, it's a story about a TV format that, as far as I know, is well known in many countries around the world. In this case, it's called Britain's Got Talent. It's a story about these two young people, that you can see in the lower picture here, who were somehow who heard each other sing at the school they attended, and the music teacher actually suggested they should sing together and they should actually take part in this Britain's Got Talent show. Now, the young man, the boy, was actually a bit insecure because he thought he didn't have the looks that one needs in order to become a TV star. But he was such a good singer that everybody said, well, he should try anyway. So they were on the stage, and when they were presented to the audience, some people in the audience actually started laughing. And it was only when they began to sing that people noticed that they were actually fantastic singers, but the fantastic singer actually was the boy. So the judges were actually very pleased with their performance, But one of the judges suggested that they should split up, and because the boy had such remarkable talent, he should actually not sing with his friend anymore, but he should sing on his own. So it's a story of friendship. Now it was quite interesting because what happened was that Jonathan, that's the name of the boy, he didn't think for long. He actually looked at his friend, and then he looked back at the judges, and he said that he did want to stay in the competition with Charlotte, together with the girl. So it's a wonderful story of a friendship. Actually, they didn't win the competition. It was a dancing dog that won the competition, ironically. But they weren't disappointed, because it's actually this this beautiful story of the friendship that kind of like bound them together. They actually produced a CD a few weeks later. They got a contract for a CD, and the title of the first song they produced was Together. So this is a good story that makes it possible to think about such important values as friendship and loyalty, to values that are extremely important in life and are, of course, extremely important to many students. So if we could have a look at the values activity below the text, Alistair, what we're doing here is that we ask students to choose the best way to finish a STEM sentence. And the STEM sentence is, I think this story tells us that in life it's important, and we have different options here: to look good, to be good at what you do, to come first, to look after your friends, to be nice to other people, and to have lots and lots of friends. So it's something to think about for students. Doesn't require a very high level of language, but while they're actually thinking about how to complete this sentence best, they are going through their own value system, so to speak, and they're going through the values expressed in the story. And then later we ask them to compare their ideas with each other, with a partner. And finally, we want them to choose 3 values from exercise 1 and put them in order of importance for themselves. So this is the point when they actually start thinking about their own values. And through the discussions, through the rank ordering activity, through listening to other kids in class in terms of what's important for them, they maybe also get second thoughts about the choices they have made. The key point, of course, is that we don't have a patronizing approach here, that it isn't the teacher or the course book or the authors here that say what is most important, which are the most important values, but it's the students actually think that are encouraged to think about their own perception of what kind of values are important, are most important, and it's the students who discuss their views in the class and talk about their values in the class.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Herbert. I'm afraid that's all we've got time for today, except just to let people know about something that we're doing at Cambridge in relation to values. Now, many children around the world are unable to access education. And this can be due to conflict or to poverty or because of unsafe journeys that they have to make to get to and from school. And a charity called UNICEF is committed to improving this situation. So we want to support their campaign to improve access to education across the world. And we've developed a new website called thinkvalues.cambridge.org, where teachers and students can get involved to help us to support the cause. So on the site, if you upload a photograph of yourself, or a selfie, and if you do that, then each time someone does that, Cambridge will donate 50 50 pence to UNICEF for each photo we receive. Also on this site, there's a free lesson plan adapted from Think, with that you can get your students understanding the value topic of access to education before encouraging them to upload their photo and support the cause. And there's no personal donation required. For every photo we receive, we'll donate 50 pence to UNICEF. By sharing the photo of the site on Facebook or Twitter, another 50 pence will be donated. So that's thinkvalues.cambridge.org. So thank you very much, everyone, for attending, and thank you very much, Herbert.
My pleasure. Thank you, Alistair, and thanks everybody out there.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye-bye.